Watching that national championship game, you can acknowledge and appreciate just what really good basketball looks like, and also acknowledge that Illinois right now isn't really close.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Locked On Illini. Thank you so much for making us your first listen each and every day. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me on all your favorite social medias. Just do a quick search for Locked On Illini, or find me on my personal at the Sunny V. Send me a message. All I ask is to keep it constructive. That's all. Also, if you want to talk Illini sports all day, every day, the link to the Discord should be in the description. There's almost 200 of us now, spread all across the country, just talking Illini, professional. The NFL draft is coming up. So definitely, if you're looking for a community, there's no better one than the one that we're providing here at Locked On Illini. Speaking of no better one, it's been a long time since I've seen a basketball game better than the one on Monday night. Now, obviously, I was a little distracted with the David Mirkovich commitment, so I didn't get to watch most of the game live. And guess what? I had 200 of you guys in here live talking about the Mirkovich signing with me. So I did get a chance to go back and finish watching that national championship game just because I'm the basketball obsessed fan that I am. And man, it was really just an incredible experience watching these two basketball teams. Now, both Florida, first off, congratulations to the Gators, but both Florida and Houston were analytically two of the top teams in the history of college basketball. And that's what this year has been. It's been very incredibly top heavy between Duke, Auburn, Florida, and Houston. These two teams are not just great for a singular season. Their numbers were just fantastic when it just comes to the history of college basketball. And the one thing I've noticed in a lot of the more recent videos that I've posted, and this includes the one from Monday night where Mirkovich committed, is a lot of you are like, hey, I just watched this national title game, and man, Illinois is so far off. We just don't have the athletes that they do. We're going to be slow. The team is going to be too soft, et cetera, et cetera. And in some ways, I'm going to acknowledge that, yeah, you're probably right. But I'm going to repeat myself. If you're going to set the standard to these four teams from this year, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. And this is not I know some of you want to say this is a Brad Underwood problem, the fact that he's recruiting a certain type of player that just doesn't look like it would have belonged on the court on Monday night. And for the most part, you might be right. I'm thinking Kylan Boswell and Tomislav Ivicic are probably the only two players that would be in the rotation of either Florida or Houston, at least the version that we saw last year. Who knows? Next year, both guys may take a second-year leap being in Champaign, and we may have other players on our team who blow up a little bit. But again, I'm not going to compare this Illini roster to strictly the four teams that we just saw this past season. Now, there are lessons to be learned. And clearly, I think for me, first and foremost, I think Brad had it right the first time with the whole get old, stay old mantra that we had. Now, one of the things I've always liked and appreciated about Brad Underwood is the fact that he is so adaptable, that if a certain strategy is not working, he does not mind pivoting. Unlike a lot of his competitors when it comes to the coaches in the Big Ten Conference. Look, a lot of you guys were hyping up Michigan State, as you should, from this past year where they won the Big Ten clearly. But a year ago, people were asking Tom Izzo if the game had passed him by. Okay, some of you have just forgotten that part, and I think it's because it aids in your argument for being so anti-Brad Underwood for some reason. But Tom Izzo is one of those guys who never embraced the transfer portal. He tried to win without it. And now this offseason is going to be a very tricky situation because now he's going to have to deal with replacing players from the transfer portal. And by the way, Jace Richardson, one of the catalysts for the amazing season that they just had, just applied for the NBA draft. And it does not look like he's even remotely interested in coming back to campus to play in college basketball another year. So Tom Izzo is going to have to adapt. And adapt is something Brad Underwood has always done a fantastic job of. And so he decided to, at one point to get old, stay old. And that's why we had that team with Coleman Hawkins, Terrence Shannon Jr., Marcus Domask, Quincy Guerrier, Justin Harmon, a bunch of seniors on that basketball team. And he had his most successful run. And I don't think it's a coincidence when they went to the Elite Eight. But if I'm trying to be objective, and I promise you I am, it was one of the 4, if not 3 best teams in the country that year. UConn, I think, was in a clear tier above. I think Purdue was a clear number 2 team. I would argue Illinois could compete with anyone who was competing for that number 3 spot. It just so happens that UConn was in Illinois' bracket, and so that's why the furthest Illinois ended up going was the Elite Eight. But Brad talked about it in the offseason. He's like, you know what? I kind of saw what a championship team looks like. And what he saw was 2 or 3 NBA players on the UConn roster, and that's what he kind of, you can tell, slowly tried to translate to, try to pivot to try to. That's why we had a guy like Kasparis on our team. That's why we had a guy like Will Riley on our basketball team. I talked about it in the season recap episode. I think one of the downfalls of this past Illinois team, I think it's a solid team, maybe even a good basketball team, but it's just incredibly tough when you're counting on your 2 best players being freshmen, because no matter how good you are, okay, maybe if you're a Cooper Flagg, things are a little different. But again, Cooper Flagg didn't have the best final couple minutes of that Final Four game himself. But even a very talented freshman is going to run into those freshman walls. And when you get into March and you're counting on your best players, sometimes it's hard when that best player is 18, 19 years old. We saw Florida over and over again in that fourth quarter. It was Walter Clayton, who just made 3 after 3. And all of us were wondering, where did this kid come from? And, if he came from Iona, he was a transfer. Florida was a very old basketball team. Houston was an old basketball team. Auburn was a very old basketball team. And sure, there comes certain provisions with being an old basketball team, and that means your budget is extremely high. And again, Illinois fans, for whatever reason, don't like to acknowledge the budget aspect. Look, we had the second highest NIL this past season. But moving forward right now, I don't know where Illinois is going to land, at least when it comes to the Big Ten Conference. But I will tell you that as much as the Big Ten Conference does spend money on sports, it's nothing like our neighbors to the south, the SEC, does. The SEC has no limits when it comes to their monetary funding of their basketball teams and, of course, their football team. So a lot of you are like, why can't Brad get this guy? Why can't Brad get that guy? And I ask, genuinely, I'm not being condescending about this, but it's like, are you making a monthly icon payment? Because a lot of those people down south, they are. Brad is building the best roster he can with the constraints that we have. And the one thing that a lot of you don't like to acknowledge is that I'm agreeing with you that Illinois does not look like they're close to either Houston, Duke, Auburn, or Florida. I'm granting you that. But I'll also push back and ask, was there any Big Ten team that looked like it belonged on the court with those teams? The answer is clearly no. And I know a lot of, me included, hand up, I've talked about how this team needs more dogs. And, the stylistic of these basketball teams was very dive for loose balls and, gritty, the Pizza Hut meme that us Illinois fans always like to brag about. Well, I will say a lot of us seem to have a short-term memory because, yes, that absolutely succeeded this year. I grant you that. But the year before, keep in mind, those weren't dog-it-out type of teams. UConn beat Purdue. And if every single year you just try to game plan and copycat what the national champion did, you're going to change strategies constantly. UConn had the multiple NBA players. And, well, let's be honest, they also had the best head coach in the entire country, at least in my opinion, in Hurley. He had a dominant center, and again, wings that are going to be NBA All-Stars in the near future. Purdue, on the opposite side, had a generational, and again, I'm going to say one of, because I know the commenters get mad when I say this, one of the greatest college basketball players of all time. And they also had 2 guys who this year were in contention for being All-Americans in Braden Smith and TKR. Those are not the grinded out dog, floor burns type of basketball teams. So it's one of those where I know we keep comparing as Illini fans. We want Illinois to win that national championship. And so when we see a bunch, Brad Underwood bringing in some talented, but, European players who may not fit the mold of what we saw on Monday night, don't let that get you down so much, because right now that mold that we saw on Monday night didn't work just the year before. And so this game of basketball is constantly changing. And you just never know what's going to work the next year. If anything, if you're a college basketball fan who started to tune out to the NBA, if you want to know where the future of basketball is, I would argue the NBA is what you're looking at, because that's what the professionals are doing. That's where the guys who are being paid millions of dollars in the front offices to analyze the game, to try to make it more efficient. The NBA game looks like now what the college basketball game is going to look like tomorrow. And I know I'm going to lose a lot of you when I say that, because a lot of you don't want to hear it. But that's certainly my opinion. And one of the reasons that I'm actually backing Brad and Ty on the 3.5 out offense that we're trying to build in Champaign. Obviously, it was a massive failure last year because the talent that they brought in did not match the offensive formula that the coaching staff had put together. But again, I just wanted to revert back and say that I know, and I'm acknowledging that Illinois is not nearly as good as those four best teams that played over this past weekend in the Final Four. But I would argue that even the fifth best team in the country this year was not close to reaching the top four. Now, could Illinois be on a path to be one of the better teams in the country? I absolutely believe that, and I expect that. Again, I've been very open about it. I do support Brad, but my expectation next year is a Sweet 16. I know the roster right now is not finalized, and that's kind of why I still hold higher hopes. But I will tell you, and I'll tackle this in a future episode, I think the roster that we have right now, when it comes to the foundational pieces, is actually better than the roster that we had last year. And so I'm very interested to see how Brad's going to fill this roster out, right? We still have one or two roster spots that need to be filled. And I'm talking about, the alphas on this basketball team. And there's plenty of time, folks. I will remind you again, last year on April 9th, when you're listening to this episode or watching this on YouTube, the only two players that had signed for Illinois when we had an entire roster to replace were Jake Davis, and exactly on April 9th, Trey White signed with Illinois. So that means all your other favorite players, Thomas Lovavicic, Will Riley, Kasparis Yakishonis, most of us had not even heard of them at the time. This offseason, we have a long time ago, and there's a lot of names, including one I brought up on yesterday's episode. And I will tell you, there's communication happening, and there's a couple other players who they're kind of back channeling. If you're in the Discord, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Again, the link is in the description. I want to hear your thoughts and try to be objective. I understand that Illinois did not belong on the floor with any of these four teams. Heck, we played against one of those four teams, and we lost by 43 to Duke. But will you concede that there's a huge tier difference between that number 4 team and that number 5 team? And I don't think it's going to continue. I just think we had an anomaly of a season. I mean, this Florida team that won it all, I think it was the first team ever to win it all that didn't have a single top 100 player on it. A lot about this season was an anomaly. So it's one of those where I understand Illinois fans are upset. But what I'm telling you is what we saw this weekend was incredibly special. But if you're an Illinois fan, don't just directly compare to that, because what we saw this past weekend, we honestly might never see ever again. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always get to talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. And welcome back to Locked On Illini. Usually there was a time for the better part of my life that when Illinois were to get the commitment of a top 500 prospect, I would lead the show because when it comes to Illinois football, that would be a potential headliner of the class. But now we're at the point where Brad Bielema has built a program where, getting one of the top prospects in the country, Javari Barnett, who I talked about briefly earlier, but I promised you that I would go more in depth on later on this week. Well, that episode is here. And to talk about Javari Barnett, I'm going to be bringing on recruiting expert Brian Smith from the Portal Podcast. Brian, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it.
So, Brian, you know a lot more about Javari than I do. For me, I'm just impressed. Basically, 445 nationally composite is what I'm looking at. But what's more important to me than any of these ratings is the teams that Brad Bielema beat out in order to get Barnett's services. I mean, you're talking about Barnett had an official visit scheduled with Alabama that he's now canceling because he's decided to commit to Illinois. And to me, that speaks volumes more than what these companies rate these players. But so you tell me a little bit about Javari, if you might.
Going into his junior year, he was already a kid that was roughly 200 pounds, and he looked like a college player. I used to live in Tampa where he's at. Been around him, saw him at Under Armour's Future 50, the elite of the elite underclassmen event, catches the ball well away from his body. He's a kid that's very powerful and just looks like a grown man when he was 16 years old. As for who he plays against, he's at Tampa Tech. They don't shy away from anybody. They're playing against elite programs, and he makes guys look bad. Why he's not in the top 300 for a lot more of the services, I'm not sure. Because Tech has a program that always, like Dallas Baker and different guys, it's insane. But anyway, this is a kid that can play right away, and he's a fit for what Illinois wants to do. He's a downhill runner with natural size who likes contact, but he's also patient enough that he's not going to just run into the back of an offensive lineman. He's been coached. So I think Barnett is a guy that will probably play early, and as a sophomore, I'd imagine he'll be the Illini starting running back.
Which is fantastic because Illinois, that running back room already is loaded, and the fact that Brett continues to bring in talent at that position, bodes well for the future of the Illini. Do you think possibly one of the reasons he might not be rated higher is this injury that he had this past year? Apparently, he only played in 3 games due to a knee injury. From what I've heard, a lot of the other schools in the recruitment kind of slow played him a little bit, whereas Brett recognized his talent right away and was very aggressive in trying to make him commit to Champaign.
That's 100%. You're guessing with knee injuries. It's an easy way to evaluate because there's so many kids, especially at running back. They say it all the time. I had a coach tell me this as a reminder not long ago. Your best ability is your availability. Mm-hmm. There's no way around it. That's an NFL saying, but it's true at the high school and college level too. You just don't know how a kid's going to come back. But at the same time, just being around him, knowing him, I'm not real worried about it. And on top of that, he's at Tampa Tech. They're going to have the right people look at him. They're not going to force him to do things that he shouldn't do. That's a big-time program, so he'll be fine.
So Javari marks, I believe this is number 4 recruit from Florida just in this recruiting cycle for Brett. And I think he's had up to 18 or 19 total just in the last couple of years. Can you tell me a little bit, just because I know that's kind of your area of expertise, what this reputation that Brad Bielema and this coaching staff, when they come down to visit Florida kids, what's being said about the program?
Well, it's kind of new because historically Illinois has not done very well at all in the Sunshine State. So it's kind of surprising. Well, I mean, recruiting for Illinois, they never had the right coaches as head coaches to recruit. They just didn't. There's no nice way to say it. Mm-hmm. And Bielema is not known as a recruiter, but after he coached at Arkansas and saw how it worked, you can be more physical than teams, but they would get beat on the outside. They've had to change that. They changed how they play defense. Offensively, they need to add more skills. It's down south, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. There's more speed down south. So they've changed how they did things. It's just smart. But as far as the recruits and getting information about them. A few of the other guys, like the quarterback, et cetera, I've been around those guys, and Illinois got in on them early. So they just changed where they're recruiting. It surprised us as recruiting it, like Illinois. It's been consistent. And the only thing that really matters at the end of the day is relationship building. The Ole Miss staff has done it. I don't know their staff, but they must have somebody with like an Orlando tie, a Tampa tie, or both. We call it the I-4 corridor between there. It's just loaded. And just about every school has somebody that can play some form of college football. But it is a who you know kind of deal. Kids from Florida are very leery of people. Like it's the hardest state to recruit personality-wise. It ain't close.
I can do that.
And to be honest, I'm surprised Florida has seen so many kids leave to go to Illinois because it's not something they would normally do. Cold weather, it's not a traditional football program. So their relationship building must be elite, or else they wouldn't have a shot at these kids.
So, like, are you hearing, like, are you at the point now where you're not surprised when you hear Illinois is involved with a player that's kind of local?
I mean, they were trying to think. I want to say 2 or 3 of the kids that were like really highly rated, at least had Illinois in that mix. And then there's Javari, et cetera. We're on that cusp. They need to get like a defensive lineman that everybody wanted, or an offensive, like one of the premium positions, a 4 or 5 star for me to completely believe it, but they're on the cusp.
Yeah.
I'm hard to convince, but like, again, Florida kids are very fickle about going north. You got to have a reason, but Illinois was a lot better over the last 2 seasons than they've been. They had the corner a couple of years ago go high in the draft. Was he number 4 overall? He was from the Panhandle, and he was a kid that didn't even I don't even know if he had stars. Like,
no, he didn't.
He was raw. Panhandle kids get overlooked because not many people scout that area, but that's an example. And I think that helped them. And now they're winning games. Mm-hmm. Like, they should be a top 15 team, give or take, I think, this year. I don't know if they have as much depth as somebody like Penn State or Notre Dame, but they're at least on that cusp. So maybe they're going to get a few of these kids because they think they can play too. Like, you're the guy that gets us over the top. I'm sure that Brett's staff is probably selling that. It's an easy sell. Everyone wants to play.
Right.
That never goes out of style.
I also think there was an advantage that Illinois had, a bonus, I guess that's the word I'm looking for, that they got to play that Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando and beat an SEC team and, get to 10 wins. A lot of the players on their current roster are from Florida, got to have their friends and family get to watch that victory over a very good SEC team in person. And then you just wonder, like, from those friends and family, how many cousins there are that are, 14, 15-year-olds who have a potential in or a future in college football. And now all of a sudden, just through that, also are going to start considering the Illini, for their college experience. Yeah,
I think that's part of it. Seeing is believing. Mm-hmm. These trainers and the guys I know, 7-on-7 coaches, a lot of them, especially the guys that aren't quote unquote 5 stars. Illinois is a school that would always offer, but they didn't necessarily follow up. The staff has done more, and if they've grown relationships with those people, I'm sure they said, hey, look, they just beat an SEC program. You watched the game. Why not give them a look? And that helps. I'm sure Javari, they discussed that with him, among others. Hey, you can come here and play and win now. It's not just we're an afterthought as a team that's hoping to get to 6 wins to go to a bowl.
Right.
They get a chance to go to New Year's bowls pretty soon and make it like a thing, not like once every 4 or 5 years, because they've consistently brought in better recruits, and now you got some depth. That's the difference between the obvious names: Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Like, it's depth. So if they continue to do this, they got a chance to compete with anybody week to week.
Brian, I really appreciate your time. Can you let the folks here know where they can find your work?
Absolutely. The Portal Podcast, recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal every day. And really the next 2 to 3 weeks is the most important time because, in case you didn't know, 16th to the 25th of this month, the portal is open again. It will be madness. There will be a lot of tampering, and I do mean a lot. I'm being very kind with that term. So you're going to see stuff happening all over the place. Check us out on the Portal Podcast. We're all over social, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. So find us wherever you get the same podcast you get with Sunny, right here on the Portal Podcast.
Brian, I appreciate your time. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Locked On Illini. Look, we're building an incredible community. We're at, I think, over 2,800 subs already. We're not even a year old. I think our 1-year anniversary is going to be on May 16th. Hey, listen, if you're in the Chicagoland area and you want to get together with a lot of other Illini fans, I'm going to host a watch party for the NBA draft. Why not watch Kasparis get drafted in that lottery amongst other Illini fans? So if you're interested in that, send me an email at talkillini@gmail.com. I'll send you details. Again, it's going to be the first opportunity for our community, which again, we're almost 200 strong just in the Discord itself, to get together and just kind of sit back, talk Illinois, our history with Illinois, our favorite moments, the moments that we cried. But if that's something you're interested in, please just send me a message at talkillini@gmail.com and I'll give you all the details for it. It's going to be in the western suburbs of Chicago on, I believe, the June 25th is the Wednesday night of the lottery of the NBA draft. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. Again, there's so much content coming. I promise you guys, for me, it's just a simple matter of which subject I want to talk about first. And I will tell you, if there's something you want me to talk about, let me know, whether it's in the comments or you leave a 5-star review on your favorite audio platform. Leave a comment, or whether it's a question or just something you want to see. And I promise I will do my best to oblige. This show is absolutely free. There's no premium content on it. And so I want to keep it that way. And I continue to be able to keep it that way because of your guys' continued support. So make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on your way out. And until next time, ILL. Love you guys.